Hi there folks, and welcome to The Future. We've been talking about ancient Greek philosophers right around 400 BC. We have suddenly catapulted ourselves 2,000 years in the future to talk about René Descartes, who's writing around 1600 AD, a little bit after that. This is not to say, of course, that no philosophy has happened in the 2,000 years in the middle. A lot of philosophy happens, both in the Eastern world and the Middle East, somewhat less so in the West. Though, of course, there are a lot of really fantastic medieval philosophers. There's a strong Catholic tradition, a strong Jewish tradition. But this course is pretty significantly constrained by our semester system and our time limits, and I want to really try to look at some of the really most influential folks in philosophy. And Descartes is certainly one of those most influential folks. He really comes and changes the scene that's been much the same. Lots of responses to the ancient Greeks for those 2,000 years, and then Descartes really comes and really shakes things up. So we're going to go ahead and unfortunately breeze over the 2,000 years in the middle and get to what we call modern philosophy. Modern is sort of a tongue-in-cheek term in philosophy because it's starting almost 500 years ago, certainly more than 400 years ago now. But the modern period starts with Descartes. He is known as the father of modern philosophy. Descartes was French. He was a philosopher and a mathematician and a scientist, and philosophers tend to be quite diverse that way. You've probably heard of Cartesian coordinates. That's our graphing system with x and y coordinates. They're called Cartesian because Descartes invented them. He's kind of a big deal. He also did a lot of philosophy, and I may be biased, but I think his philosophy was even more important than that. He concerned himself with metaphysics, epistemology, and philosophy of religion, primarily, so he's doing less of the ethics and politics than the Greeks that we read before were talking about. He's looking at sort of these more abstract issues, but we'll see that they might be pretty important. He will seem really obscure at first. It's important to remember that he really does have a goal here. He was also a very committed Catholic, and so you'll see as we go through, he really wants to talk about the idea of the Christian God, but he's also worried because science is really taking off in the late 1500s, early 1600s, so he's worried about how to reconcile science and sort of the empirical method with philosophy, and we'll see a lot of this happening. So Descartes, what we're reading from him is a series of works called the Meditations. There are 6 short meditations, and he basically writes one of them per day for a little while. He stays home in his study, sort of his library and writing room, and he thinks really hard about deep questions. The Meditations are probably the most quoted text in philosophy. The most famous line in philosophy comes from the Meditations. We'll see what that is later on. And also, Descartes tends to be quite inspiring to Hollywood, to authors, etc. Movies like Inception and The Matrix, lots of sort of juicy sci-fi has come out of Descartes' writings. So let's jump right in. We read Meditations 1 and 2 for this week. And so Descartes starts off, he just gets right into it, and we're not going to have any sort of fluffy, theatrical introductions like Socrates has. He's just going to jump right in. So he's worried. He says, well, I've been thinking, a lot of what I think I know is actually wrong. And I don't like this. So he's going to take on this project in his Meditations. He wants to get rid of all of his false opinions. He wants to be right about things all the time. This seems like a reasonable goal. Being wrong is no fun. He wants to be right about things. So he wants to get rid of everything that he thinks, all of his opinions that are false. But of course, this would take forever if you tried to get rid of them one by one. Right? If I had to think of every single opinion that I have, and then study it and go, well, is that really true? This would take me thousands of years. And obviously, Descartes doesn't have thousands of years to do this. So he ascribes to a belief called foundationalism. The idea here is that all of the beliefs above a certain belief, quote-unquote above, rest on it, in the same way that a building rests on its foundation. And so here's the thought. If I want to demolish a house, there are a couple of ways I could do it. I could go from the top down, right, but then I need to take off every single piece from the top. Or I could go from the bottom up, right? This is how I'm sure you've seen YouTube videos or on TV or something like that. When you implode a building, you demolish it really quickly because you take it down from the inside, right? It sort of collapses in on itself, and so this way you don't need to take off the roof and then, you know, the top story, then the next story down. No, you knock the whole thing down in one fell swoop. This is going to be Descartes' plan. He says, well, I could start from the top, but that's dumb. What I should do is I should start at the bottom, the most basic beliefs, and if I can prove those are false, I can forget everything on top. So what he's going to do in the Meditations is he's going to challenge some of his most basic beliefs, and you'll be surprised maybe to see just how far he can get, and we will start in on that in the next video.